Welcome to the All About You podcast. Just before we start this conversation, I really just wanted to say something. Many people ask me, why do I have a podcast? How much money do I make? Do I get lots of freebies? My answer is I don't make any money. I don't have any sponsors and never will do. For me, having the podcast is to try and educate, motivate, and inspire people. And if one person gets something from a conversation from the podcast, that is reward enough for me. But on a personal note, I just want to say I just feel totally honored that people are prepared to come and share their very, very personal stories on the podcast. I feel very humble that people will do that on my podcast. And I have to say, this conversation I'm going to have now is one of those podcasts. We're going to be talking to a lady called Risa, and I can't begin to tell you what this woman has gone through, and she will tell you her story. But I feel quite emotional recording this podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Risa.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me, Sheila. I'm feeling the emotions as well. But I'm so grateful to be here.
Risa, let's start with just talking about all these incredible things you have done on your journey, which has not been easy.
Yes. Gosh, I don't know where to start, but let's say it started with a brain tumor, a tumor at the base of my brain, and it comes with a very destructive disease attached to it. And the disease is called acromegaly. That's when I got that diagnosis, that's right around this time I decided I wanted to really start living. And that's where my whole perspective and a big shift in my life happened.
I mean, you are sitting there. I obviously can see you on video. You're sitting there. You look incredibly healthy. You are incredibly smiley, and we've spoken a couple of times, and you're a very, very smiley person. How old were you, if you don't mind me asking, when you had that diagnosis?
I was in my early 40s, but I would say it was about roughly 7, 8 years before that where I really started noticing changes in my body that I couldn't explain, and that kept getting dismissed by doctors. To give every the listeners a little bit of a background about me, I call her pre-diagnosis Rissa. She was extremely healthy, fit, very rigid in her lifestyle and thinking, very determined. And I was an Ironman athlete, mountain climber, and anything intense and difficult I enjoyed. I also operated my own wedding and event planning company that was very successful. And I prided myself in being very detail oriented and really good at coordinating and managing all kinds of moving parts. But I started noticing changes in that, and I kept going to doctors even though I was really healthy. I ate healthy, I took care of myself, and I kept saying, there's something off in my body. And my doctors kept saying, you're fine, you're an athlete, we're not worried, your blood work's fine. And I kept saying, no, there's something wrong. So I decided, because I kept getting dismissed by doctors, I decided to start researching it on my own. And things were pointing to thyroid, which is very common for women, especially as they age as well, having thyroid issues. But I kept being told my blood work was fine. And like I said, fast forward 7 years, I had these impossible headaches that just never went away, like severe, severe headaches where I was maybe sleeping 2 hours a night because they were so bad. And I went into the doctor again, and she said, "Well, I'm not worried. You're probably overtraining for one of your events, or you're not drinking enough water." So I asked for an MRI, and she said, "I don't think you need one. You're healthy. I'm not worried." And I asked again, I said, "Well, I'd like to just rule it out, just rule everything out. Better safe than sorry." And she said, "No, I don't think you need one. And besides, they're expensive." And so I sat there for a moment, and I almost just accepted that response. But then something in me that day found, like, Rissa found her voice for the first time. And I said, "Order me the MRI. And I hope I'm wrong." And I wasn't. 1 week later, I had an email from the doctor saying, "You have an enlarged pituitary. Go see an endocrinologist." And that was it. I had no idea what that meant or anything. And then a week after that, I was sitting in an endocrinologist's office and looking at a massive tumor crammed in between my eyeballs in my brain. And she's pointing to it saying, "It has to come out." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, what?" But I have to say, despite getting that shocking news, the most important thing in that moment was validation. I even have the goosebumps thinking about it, and I have some tears behind my eyes right now because it was like excuse me, I knew it. Like I knew there was something going on for almost 8 years in my body. And so having that validation was the most important thing in that moment for me. And it also was a big lesson in never doubting myself again.
I mean, Risa, that is an incredible story. I think it's very important that I have a lot of people on this podcast talking about health, whether it's guest individual stories or whether it's health professionals. And I always say, you know your body better than anybody. You know what's normal for you, but you know your body. But it comes up time and time again, people having to fight against medical professionals going, "Look, I know the blood works fine. I know you've tested it. I know there's something wrong." And thank God you did find your voice, Risa, and say, "No, order me that MRI." And you were proved right. But why should it take back to see different doctors and medical specialists? This is what annoys me so much.
Yes, yes. And I mean, it's really taught me, though, to become more vocal and, become more of my own advocate. And I have to say, I piss off a lot of doctors. I mean, here's another good example. I recently was diagnosed with a tumor on my kidney, and my doctor, I have a new doctor, said, "Oh, it looks benign. I'm not worried. Maybe get it checked again in 6 months." And I said, "I'm worried. So I'm going to get it checked further." And lo and behold, they found another tumor behind it that looks cancerous. And so again, I spoke up. I just trust me now over anyone else. And even if it came back fine, that's peace of mind for me. And that's what I would wish for anyone. Get the test anyways, or ask more questions anyways, because it's for your own sanity and your own peace of mind. If I were to give a piece of advice, that's what that's what I would say.
I always say health is wealth. If you haven't got your health, it makes a huge difference. So, the moral of the story, keep going, ask for another opinion, scream, shout, stamp your feet, get those tests.
Yes.
Doctors are not gods. but we have got the option of getting these tests, which will give you peace of mind one way or the other what is going on when you know your body and you just know something isn't right. What I want to do though, Risa, is to go on from that point.
Sure. So I remember sitting in that endocrinologist office and she's telling me like you have this tumor, oh, and this really nasty disease called acromegaly that comes with it. And I couldn't even pronounce acromegaly for like 6 weeks. It was such a weird name to me. And I still didn't understand what it all meant. And so there was that pre-diagnosis Rissa that was like, okay, well, what do we have to do to just get this taken care of so I can get on with my life? I have a very full life. I'm very busy. I really didn't understand what I was facing quite yet. And so, I was told I'd have to have brain surgery. Of course, there's no guarantees. And so I went on to have brain surgery 3 months later, and they couldn't get the entire tumor out. So now I was faced with how do we manage this tumor and the disease that comes with it basically for the rest of my life? The disease can very much be terminal if it's not managed. So I was faced with the difficult decision of radiation treatment or not, or trusting that some of the medications out there would do the job it needed to do. To me, there was no good answer. Again, I was a bit of a health fanatic. I didn't even take like ibuprofen for pain or anything. I was very much close to being a purist, not perfect by any means. I was really faced with that challenging decision. And I went on to have radiation treatment. It hasn't worked as of today. And so I am now also on some very nasty medications to try to keep things balanced and under control. Through that journey, I realized that I had a choice to focus on who I no longer would be ever again and focus on what I can't do and focus on all the sadness and grief around it. Or I could decide to move forward and essentially embrace a new life and a new person, that was emerging from all this. And so I call her post-diagnosis Risa, and I like her way better.
Risa, just listening to your story where you said, what am I going to do? Am I basically going to mourn the Risa I was before? Or am I going to embrace this new life ahead of me, whatever that may be? I mean, making that decision, oh my God, I'm in awe of you, Risa. One thing I really wanted to talk about is this, how one word can make a difference in your life, and that word is can. Because I've watched your TED talk, which is absolutely brilliant. I want you to talk about this word can, because how you have taken that word forward is just phenomenal. So talk us through this one word, Risa.
Well, I remember there was a very specific turning point in this journey for me. And I was sitting in my living room. I have this large brown leather sofa, and it was 6 months post surgery. I just finished radiation treatment. I had been living in these worn out, tattered gray sweatpants for months and months and months, to the point of, where the hem is just frayed to nothing. And I was wearing this faded purple hoodie, and I was sitting on this brown leather sofa, binge watching another Netflix show. My husband at the time, asked me, hey, do you want to try to get out for a walk with the dogs today? And I said no once again, maybe tomorrow. And I remember thinking, man, this is no way to live. I was just so focused on well, I can't get off this couch. I can't leave the house. I can't barely make it to our mailbox. And so I had to switch that. And this whole turning point, I had to switch that. And so I was like, well, okay, but what can I do? And again, that's when I started embracing, what was possible. And so in that moment, I realized I needed something to live for. And that's when I signed up for a 1,000 on that same day on that leather sofa. I signed up for a 1,845-mile bicycle journey from Canada to Mexico down the west coast of the US. And I had 14 months to figure out how I was going to get there. I had to start asking myself, okay, well, what can I do right now? I have that goal, and clearly I can't accomplish that right now in this moment, but what can I do right now? And that first step was getting off the couch. I can get off this couch. And then the next step was I can get out of these worn out, gnarly gray sweatpants. And then I couldn't even get back on my bike right away, but I made it to the mailbox. I walked to the mailbox, and then I actually started painting and giving some of my art to people for as gifts. It was really step by step, and that art, I started selling that around the world, and that got me inspired and ignited a spark in me. And it was such a mindfulness practice that it kept me from focusing on not being able to ride my bike yet. But then I did. Then I got on my bike in my basement and started riding for 5 minutes at a time. But like I had to keep asking myself in each moment, what can I do? And sometimes it wasn't like suddenly, like, woo, all of a sudden I'm doing all this. Like some day, I still had some days where, okay, well, I can get out of bed today and brush my teeth. That may have been it, but I kept asking myself over and over. And this word can turned into a mantra for me. And the acronym, using each letter from the word can, acronym capable, able, now. What am I capable and able to do now in this moment? And that just kept taking me from one step to the next step to the next step. And eventually I was standing at the border, the US and Canadian border with my bike.
I don't know what to say, Risa. I mean, that is just incredible. And I have written down can, and I've got it in front of me here. And I'm just thinking, whenever we've got a day and things are just not going the way we planned, just stupid little things, they've run out of something in the supermarket, someone's late. I'm just always going to think of you, Risa, because your story is just incredible. And the fact that you said, okay, what can I do? I can get off this sofa. I can get out of these sweatpants, and maybe I can get to my mailbox. And then you've signed up for some crazy bike ride and you did it.
I did it. I did it.
Oh my God, we're both in tears now.
We are.
I mean, the training must have been grueling for you when you're trying to fight the disease, pumped full of medication.
Yes, it was interesting because as an athlete, I was used to knowing my body's capabilities. I knew what I needed when I needed it. And truly, when I woke up from surgery, I felt like I was no longer in the same body. It really wasn't functioning the same. And it's not just physically. I was facing some pretty significant cognitive issues too, where my brain and body weren't connecting. So, if my brain said turn right, I would turn left. Or if I tried to type words in an email, it would come out garbled. In my brain, I was typing it appropriately or correctly, but then I'd look at the screen and it would just be all jumbled, mumbled letters and characters. And so And then memory, especially short term, that's still a challenge for me as well. So it was really strange to, no longer know how my body was going to respond or react. And then also dealing with some pretty complex medications on my bike journey as well. And I talk about a lot of this in my book. There were challenges along the way because one of my medications I can't administer myself. I have to have a medical professional do that. So I would have to kind of coordinate that along the way, and that presented its own challenges as well. So yeah, it's been learning experience. Let's say that, a relearning experience.
What made you decide to write your book, Risa?
Well, this goes back to that moment on the couch. Like it was really felt like a life or death moment to me. I really felt like if I stayed there any longer, I may as well die. I may as well just die. And I didn't want to die. I wanted to live. And I wanted to live better than I did before. I wanted to be a better person. I wanted to start checking things off my bucket list instead of talking about all the things I was going to do someday. I wanted to actually do them. And now I had this opportunity. So my whole world opened up. Because like I said, pre-diagnosed Rissa, she was so rigid, and I was always training for these intense endurance races, and meanwhile this whole world and this whole life was passing me by. And so my 1,800-mile bike journey came from that bucket list, and so did my book. I have wanted to write a book since I don't know, since sixth grade. There were times in the past where I would start and stop and start and stop and just not inspired. But then this felt like the story. This felt like the time. And again, I was done with someday. The time was now. And so I embraced it, and that had its up and downs as well. And I wanted to quit so many times, but then I finally made it happen, and it's gone on to win several awards, and I've gone on to write the screenplay for it, and it was just acquired by a film production company, and it just keeps going.
I mean, that is incredible that it's been picked up. Hopefully, with the stars aligning, it'll be made into a movie.
Yes, fingers
It
crossed.
certainly deserves to be, Risa, I have to say. It's such a valid point you've made there. Like most people, you had things on your list someday when this happens, when the time is right, when I've got the money. We are all guilty of that. But you said, no, no, the time is now.
Absolutely.
So, Risa, where are you now in your life? So, the book is out there, you've done the bike. How are you feeling?
Well, I'm definitely experiencing the progression of my disease, but now I feel like I have the tools to face it. And because I want to live and live so fully, I'm embracing every moment, and I'm still setting goals and checking things off my bucket list, just continuing to evolve and become a better person every day. I mean, life is just way better when you love yourself and the life you're living.
I mean, there are so many lessons you have given us. You know, we bitch and we moan about all these things going wrong, traffic and the government and this and that and everything else. None of that really matters. It matters in that moment, but at the end of the day, life is for living, and you made that decision. You could have gone the other way and said, no, do you know, I'm just not going to fight anymore. But you said, no, there's too much I want to do, too many things I want to experience. Oh my God.
Yeah. And even I have hard moments all the time, and I'm not always happy and smiley, but I go back to that question, and I even acknowledge like, this sucks. But what can I do in this moment? What can I do? Sometimes the answer is nothing, nothing at all. And sometimes it leads me to the next thing.
Risa, I have to say, I am just in awe of you, and this is a very, very emotional podcast. I'm so glad you reached out to me. I cannot thank you enough for your time sharing your story.
Well, it's such a gift, and it's truly is a healing experience for me every time I get to share, and connection is one of my top values, and I'm always so grateful for connecting with others. Again, there's so many gifts in all of this. So thank you so much, Sheila, for bringing me on your show and allowing me to connect with you and the listeners.
Risa, you are so, so welcome. I'm going to put the link to your book and your website with the podcast. And can I just say, I am so, so proud of oh my God, I can't even speak. I'm so, so proud of our conversation and you sharing your incredible story. Risa, thank you. Thank you. I can't say anything else but thank you.
Thank you so much.